Welcome to Busted Speakers, I'm Alex.
And I'm Cam.
And today we're reviewing the fourth album by Jessie Ware, What's Your Pleasure? Now, let's not kid ourselves here. Neither of us are fans, or we weren't fans before we heard this album, right, Cam?
Yeah, I don't think I'd ever even heard of her, except unless maybe I'd heard some song that she guested on like a couple years ago.
Yeah, there was a song on Disclosure's first album that she appears on.
The only one I remember from that was the one with Sam Smith.
Yeah, I don't think it was even a single, it was an album track. A pretty good one, but that was the only capacity I'd ever heard of her before.
Yeah, so...
I mean, you always get albums from an artist where they pick up fans, and I think that's what we are. We're just, on our fourth album, I'd like to say we're both fans now. I guess that's kind of spoiling our review, but yeah. The only other time I think I may have even come close to knowing of her existence is her first album. I'd seen the album cover before, but with no context of who she was. She's kind of well known in the UK scene of the 2010s. I mean, she's been putting out albums, she's gained a kind of cult following, and it's mainly our gone, sadly, this week co-host Ed who brought my attention to this album. He was recommending singles left, right and centre. For some reason I didn't check them out. I don't know if you have this, Cam, where sometimes when singles are coming out you like to save them for the album.
There was a period where I would just not check out lead-off singles, especially by artists that I really liked, because I wanted to go into an album completely blind. But if it's something that I have no expectations for, I'm a little more willing to check out singles.
So neither of us checked out the singles for this. The first one being Spotlight, which is also the first track here. How did you find this album, Cam?
Well, I kind of spoiled myself going in. I tend to do this anyway, just looking up professional reviews, especially if it's an artist I don't know anything about. And so I saw that this album was getting raves pretty much across the board.
Yeah.
So that gave me hope that I would really like it. And it's one of those cases where I do really like the sound and style of it. I guess the easiest genre to lump it into is disco, maybe not necessarily new disco. I don't even really know what new disco specifically sounds like. But.
Yeah, I mean, there's stuff like Todd's Turge, or Turge. I don't know how you say his second name, apologies there. I guess Random Access Memories Daft Punk would constitute as new disco too. I don't know, it's like trying to bring disco themes back to the modern music scene, I guess.
Yeah, and I have no problem with classic disco when it's done well. And this isn't quite to the level of classic disco, in my opinion, but I also just didn't really think I felt it was deserving of the raves necessarily, but that could be because, like I said, I haven't heard any of her previous output, so I don't have any of the build-up associated with her.
Yeah, I mean, I'd seen the hype as well, and I'll be honest, this is maybe a foolish move, but I actually ordered the album based on the hype, which is like a 2002 move to do. That is not something people do anymore, is buy albums based on hype generated around an album. People listen to an album before buying it normally, but I guess we're not normal people on this channel.
Normal people don't even buy albums these days. Haven't you learned anything from the video game community? No pre-orders.
Well, I'm not gonna say it was a foolish move. I just don't think I should do that anymore as a rule of thumb. But I like this album, so I guess it paid off. And I don't really like following hype blindly, but the hype for this was overwhelming. Acting as if this was already that pop album of the decade, and we're just in the cursed year of 2020, so that was saying something. As for albums that came out this year, obvious comparisons could be made to Future Nostalgia, as that one also reached back to disco as a sort of influence point. And I feel like this one also reaches back to, yes, the decade everyone has influence from, the 80s. Yep, every album that, unless you're doing a proper contemporary pop album like Charlie XCX's album, they're gonna be 80s influenced by far.
I also felt a little more 90s influence on some songs, like Adore You and In Your Eyes and The Clothes That Remember Where You Are all gave me really strong like trip hop or down-tempo vibes.
Good point, good point. Especially like Adore You is a bit more. I don't know if you could say lighter song. I guess it kind of is. It's definitely not a full blown disco tune like Spotlight or the title track are. So that's a good point. I feel like it mainly stems from like late 70s disco though. There's a depth to her voice. I don't know if you agree with this. I think because maybe she's a little bit older than your typical pop singer. I think she's in her 30s. She's had years of experience at this point. This is her fourth album. I think she's got one of the most deep, soulful voices in the game, in a way. Like, very high class. Like, I think she's almost got a good enough voice to be like a vocal jazz singer. Very breathy, more depth than you'd expect. And I think her vocals are as crucial to why these songs are good as the songwriting, structuring, and production, in my opinion. Like, did you even think they were particularly good, or just good enough?
Yeah, she really does have a lovely voice, and she uses it in a bunch of different ways on the album. Like breathy is a pretty good way to describe it, but it's not like she just sings everything at a whisper.
No.
But she doesn't really do any belting or anything either.
She's just got really good enunciation and like gets the hooks across really well. And this album does have hooks for days. That is one thing I think nobody can deny.
And I think something else that we forgot to mention, like, there are also really strong R&B feelings on this album, and I think that's more where her vocal styling comes from.
Yeah, true. I mean, when I was saying she could do vocal jazz, that's not what I want her to do. I just think she has the capabilities to do it. I think her, like, you get some pop singers, and I love them, but, I don't want to catch flack by mentioning names, but there are definitely at least some pop singers that, outside of the context of pop and the production around it, may not be anywhere near as good. But I feel like Jessie Ware has good enough talent to, be a good singer outside of this context.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
And I definitely agree that there's definitely more of an R&B side to her that helps enhance her vocals. I think the songs that have funkier hooks or bass parts, like Ooh La La, Soul Control, Read My Lips, and to a lesser extent Step Into My Life, I think those are like the best songs just because they get more funky, more grounded, gritty musical qualities to them. I don't know, I feel like I like those type of songs more than the outright disco ones. But going back to Spotlight, there was kind of a funny story when we were listening to that earlier today. I had said to Cam I was convinced there was some banjo on it, and when you're thinking this is a disco dance pop album, I'm sure you thought I was going a bit mad at saying that.
Yeah, just a little bit.
But there is some, I swear, at like 3 minutes 20, I swear in the left channel, you can hear a little bit in the background.
Yeah, I did hear it. Like, I mean, whatever it is, I heard it eventually.
Yeah, so we're either both going mad or one of us is, so, or
probably both of us.
Neither.
We've been doing this too long.
Banjo has no place in music like this, but I guess it's there, and I don't know if it helps or doesn't, but I swear it's there. Anyone who like is listening to Spotlight, which has been out since I think the first quarter of the year there, that's definitely not something you'd notice on first listen, but I swear it's there. So that's kind of an interesting thing if you think you know every facet of this album. Stuff gets introduced all the time when you're listening to this. What did you think of the closer, Remember Where You Are? Because I think that's actually maybe my least favourite song.
Yeah, I kind of felt like that one was a bit of a retread of what was already covered in Your Eyes, especially, and it's like 30 seconds longer, so that didn't really help my opinion of it.
Yeah, I feel like the songs were just getting a bit too long at that stage in the album. It's mixed really weirdly too, where like the vocals are really either too much in the mix or like overlaid too much. Like there's too much vocal overlaying is the best way I could say it. Like it doesn't sound bad, it doesn't sound like a mess, it's just I prefer more focused vocals as opposed to like climactic vocal part over vocal part. I don't know, it doesn't quite work for me. I think about the point where I'd just preferred another low-key track at the end. I don't need a huge bombastic ending to an album, if you get me. It's a similar case to like Demon Days, the song by Gorillaz. I'm not the hugest fan of it. I know a lot of people love that album, and I do too, but like that track, I don't need it at the end, if you get me.
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak to that one because I haven't listened to Demon Days in a while. I don't know,
Thank God you said in a while. If you'd never heard it, I would have not been happy.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I've heard it.
Yeah.
Got this great special edition. Folds out really weird, but we're not talking about gorillas here.
I
Um,
feel like we've been more prepared, but yeah.
yeah, yeah. I don't know. Like I said, it felt like kind of a retread of In Your Eyes, but I actually might like this one a little bit more than In Your Eyes. I don't know. Like I love big washes of vocals and things. And then there's just something evocative about the repeated, the heart of the city is on fire line. Um,
So
but
are
like
you
I'm not
going
entirely
back
sure.
entirely on what you said earlier? In a
I
way.
mean, I think I'm clarifying what I said earlier.
Okay.
Yes, I'm going back on what I said earlier.
Fair
Yeah,
enough.
but like I don't know. I think it's okay as a closer, but like it maybe doesn't feel final enough for my liking.
So before we end, did you have any specific favorite tracks, or was it just a consistent good album?
I don't really have any favorites outside the first four.
Fair.
I think What's Your Pleasure probably was a standout for me.
I mean, the first time I heard this album, it was sensory overload. Just too much happening at once to take in. Definitely one you need a lot more listens, but, kind of on my third listen, I was like, yeah, I can comprehend what I'm listening to. This is good. That's all I can say. This is a really good album, but I guess your mileage will vary on how much you like the influences and just pop in general. What would you give it?
So like I said at the beginning, I do feel like the overwhelming praise is maybe a little bit overstated. The album is good, but I can't really describe it. It's just missing the spark that I need to really latch on to a dance type album. I don't know if like the grooves just aren't strong enough, or if like I could definitely think that the more disco-y songs could use a little bit more of the classic disco gaudiness. But I mean maybe that's just like part of what makes it new disco is that it doesn't rely on the cheesy strings and horns all the time that characterize classic disco. But I mean, there are good songs on here, even if it does get a little bit repetitive, even if they do get a little bit long for my liking. So I'm just going to give this a 7. It's a pretty good album. I don't really see much reason to return to it. It's good for what it is.
And I think it's great for what it is, so there we go. Although I definitely had similar feelings to you, Cam, about it, like, weirdly on my fifth listen, or something like that. I don't know what it was. It was just like, maybe I'd heard too many albums that day, and this just was not impactful in any way on that listen. So, yeah, it definitely, I feel like this is one where if it's the first thing you listen to on that day, it'll be more impactful than if it's your fifth album you've listened to that day. So, take that for what you will. I generally quite like this album, especially Soul Control and Read My Lips and Ooh La La. Just the funkier tunes. That's the side of disco, because disco could get quite funky as opposed to cheesy, which I guess is still cheesy. Yeah, the hype is probably overstated. There are other albums I like a bit more this year, just more tunes that I could get into. But this has the tunes, it has the hooks, it has great vocals, great production for the most part. So yeah, I mean, 8 out of 10 for me. I mean, this is just a really front to back, pretty much good album. Very catchy. Recommended. That was our review of What's Your Pleasure by Jessie Ware on Busted Speakers. Thank you very much for listening. Leave us a like, leave us a subscribe. Click the bell if you want. I don't know, I never do that, so you can if you want. Don't know what it does. You can follow us on Twitter at _Busted Speakers. Weird handle, I know, but I believe the real one was taken. You can follow Cam on Twitter at subprospector, right?
Yep, and I apologize for the connotations of the word sub in this day and age.
Oh, yeah. And we've got a Facebook page, I guess. Weirdly, more people like it than subscribe to us, but that's neither here nor there. And yeah, thanks for tuning in. Bye.
Bye-bye.